Hallo und willkommen to today's premium Advent beer video. I'm Luke.
How do I say my name is Matt in German?
Mein Name ist Matt.
That's easy. Mein Name ist Matt.
Close enough.
Das ist ein Pilsner.
Yep. Today we're drinking a pretty traditional style. I don't know if you've learnt this from watching these videos, but I am quite a big fan of traditional German beer
That's
styles.
how you pour it, right?
Well, that's actually a slow pour. So yep, absolutely. There's
I'm just going to pour mine like a normal person, but Luke has specific tastes.
Well, a lot of people do like drinking a German lager or a German Pilsner with what they call a slow pour, and it's generally you have those special Luca beer taps that you don't see many of around.
So if you're looking for one of those, for an example, you'll see them at Garage Project Kingsland and the Garage Project tap room down in Wellington.
Yeah.
They've brought in a bunch and they're pouring their beer on it, and it's really interesting, so have a chat to them about it.
And you can ask for a traditional slow pour. This is sort of a canned version of it, which you just basically fill a glass with foam and it slowly turns into beer, and you get a beer which is a bit smoother and less carbonated, obviously, because it's kicked a bunch of the bubbles out of it.
Yeah.
Cheers.
But Pilsner is one of the most traditional beer styles. Originally from
Pilsen.
Pilsen, which is, I always get confused with the Czech Republic now. I keep saying Czechoslovakia, which I'm not supposed to say.
Czechia?
Czechia? Yeah, I think they're calling it Czechia now.
Yeah.
So it's originally a Czech beer style, and it shares a lot of its origins with traditional German lagers, and it is brewed widely throughout Germany. But as a lager, it's kind of at the crisper and drier end, as opposed to stuff like a Munich Helles or stuff like Kolsch and Dortmunder that we've talked about earlier in the Advent calendar. It's got that nice kind of bit more hoppiness, bit more bitterness to it than most other lager styles.
Yeah, very broadly, Pilsners are hoppier, drier, crisper, and also crisper. These are all words that are kind of hard to actually, like, what does crisp mean? What does, but it's to do with the mouthfeel, and a lot of that is to do with the water chemistry, and, what were you going to say something, water chemistry?
Well, yeah, water chemistry is a huge part of it. So it's something that doesn't get discussed that often.
We should discuss it.
Yeah, we are.
Cool.
It's something that doesn't get discussed that often by the general public, and often gets neglected, particularly by brewers who are just starting out. But water chemistry can have a dramatic effect on your beer.
Yep.
So the Pilsen water profile, it's to do with the balance of the minerals, calcium sulfate, calcium chloride, magnesium,
Various kinds of salts.
Yeah, various salts and chalk, and every region in the world has their own kind of mineral composition that goes into the water, or mineral water, as you'd buy in the shops, and you can see that that kind of regionality of water has an impact, particularly on beers like Pilsner from Pilsen. IPAs had their origin in Burton-on-Trent in the UK, and so Burtonized water, adjusting your mineral profile to meet that, became popular in the early days of IPA. Irish Stout has its origin in the waters of Dublin, so it really has a big effect on, one of the things is that mouthfeel and that crispness, as Luke alluded to, so that mineral profile in the water of Pilsen, which gives rise to that really kind of crisp, dry, kind of across the tongue you get a kind of almost kind of a hard powderiness if you're familiar with drinking hard water, that really goes into accentuating the style.
Yeah, water is definitely the most overlooked ingredient in beer. These days it's hops that is always the champion, but the yeast, the malted barley does a lot, and various endless adjuncts. But yeah, water gets overlooked, and especially by home brewers that generally just use water from their tap when they're making beers. And so we've been giving you home brewers a few tips over the last couple of weeks, but that would be a major tip for home brewers to really level up your brewing. Look at the water. And look at the different regions. So in Brewers Friends and the different brewing softwares, you can input your water profiles. And when you hear about soft water versus hard water, that's just the amount of minerals that are in the water, basically. And that's why in some parts of the world, you may have lived in places where your kettle gets filled with limescale, because the minerals of the water just build up around the heating elements of your kettle. So yeah, in this beer, obviously they're replicating the water profile of, well, this is a German-style Pilsner, which is slightly different to a Czech-style Pilsner. So it would be of Bavaria and southern Germany that they'll be emulating. And they've done a pretty fantastic job with the other ingredients as well. So this has got a small amount of acidulated malt, but it's mainly floor malted Pilsner malt, which is quite a laborious way of doing your malting and makes all the difference to the flavour. It's a thing that a lot of people might take shortcuts.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, as Luke said, with water, if you're mucking around at home, you can get a little gram scale from most homebrew shops because the additions are have to be very precise. But yeah, get a water report from your local water board. It should give you a general indication of what your regional water is. I made the change to doing that at home recently, and it's made a massive effect to the quality of my homebrew beers. Whereas previously I'd only been doing it on our commercial stuff. So yeah, but anyway, probably enough about water for now.
What's acidulated malt?
Acidulated malt is so a lot of the time. Okay, we're still on water, you guys.
Yeah.
So
tricked you. You thought we're into malt chat.
yeah. So pH, the acidity of your water, is very important for getting an efficient mash and getting the enzymes that are in the malt to break down all those carbohydrates into sugars. And the acidity of the water is really important for that. So acidulated malt is used to acidify your water. So if your water's too alkaline, not acid enough to get the most efficiency out of your mash and out of your grain, the acidulated malt comes in there to do that adjustment for you. A lot of modern breweries will use lactic acid or I think phosphoric acid to make those adjustments in place of acidulated malt. Because they've got pH meters and can be really precise with that because you get variations on the day and easier to adjust with a little bit of acid than bags of grain. But yeah, it's all about water chemistry once again.
And floor malted Bohemian Pilsner malt, which you can do a lot with a very simple malt base. And I think that us as brewers with small gods, often I know I can get a bit excited about different speciality malts, and we've just worked out a recipe a few days ago, and I think I had 8 or 9 different kinds of malts in there, and Matt was like, "Why are you?" I was like, "Oh, a bit of this," but you can just use one kind of malt in a beer and have something that's really fantastic.
Yeah, so a lot of the time there's a call for a big and varied malt bill, particularly in big beers like imperial stouts and Baltic porters and barley wines and
layers of complexity.
Less so in barley wines, but
Yep.
I think that a mistake that a lot of home brewers and young brewers and people can often make is to cram all these different malts into a beer because this one's got that flavour and that flavour.
More is more.
But there is. And more is more in some instances. I'm a big proponent of more is more. Whereas in something like a Pilsner, where you're wanting something really nice and clean as a platform for other flavours, you can take a more simplistic approach with a single variety of, as Luke says, floor malted Bohemian Pilsner.
Yeah.
But Hop Nation are a really cool brewery, and they're the brewery that made this beer. And once again, this is a Melbourne brewery. So they have opened their brewery in Footscray, which is in the, I always have to do the western suburbs of Melbourne. I've just got to go around the compass. In a place called Footscray. I think we touched on Footscray earlier in the Advent calendar, day 5 or so, when we were talking about Orange Zap, the Moondog beer. So Moondog have recently opened in Footscray, which is Hop Nation's, I was going to say stomping ground, but that's another Melbourne brewery. It's Hop Nation's home turf. And they're a brewery who's been on the scene for a little while and making some fantastic beers over there.
Yeah, some real interesting innovations. They've got a lovely core range, but they do some interesting wild ferment, funky stuff. In the last 3 years or thereabouts, they've been making seltzers, which are called Rays, and after Footscray, and they do a really good job at seltzers, which we're seeing fewer of these days, but I think the good ones are still sticking around, and that they are a popular one.
Yeah, and they've got a bit of a connection to New Zealand as well, because they started out brewing on Sawmill's original brew kit. So nice little piece of connection there.
The name of this beer is Rattenhund, which isn't really a real word. It's just two words jammed together in German, so it just means rat dog, basically.
AKA the rat dog.
So I did have to look it up, and it was actually one of the brewers at Hop Nation has a beautiful little Italian greyhound. Those like really tiny dogs, and he just bought it in one day, and I think it got christened the Rattenhund by the team, which is a brilliant name for a beer.
Yeah. And yeah, it's a really nice beer, really well put together, classic example of the Pilsner style.
It's beautiful. I love a Pilsner. I hope you enjoy it like even 1/10 as much as I do, and you'll have a really good time. But yeah, it's 8 weeks lagered, 8 weeks of lagering time went into making this beer, and that's just why it's just so crisp and just got such distinct flavours to it. It's not a sort of beer you can rush. And I think for a lot of people that are just getting into craft beer, you're all about the big flavours, massive hops, big adjuncts, and a beer like this might be seen as a little bit boring or not that interesting. But I think when you come full circle and you do start to really appreciate these wonderful, simple beers that are deceptively simple.
Yeah, there's an elegance to them and just like a cleanliness, a clarity of flavour, and a clarity of purpose behind it. So you know why you're drinking this beer, and yeah, it's really well executed.
It's a great beer.
Cheers.
Cheers, everybody. See you next time. Cheers.